All right, everybody. We are tuning in live on a Thursday. So excited for you all to come and spend some time in our small group leadership discussion today. This is another one of our exciting Digital Candor events supported by Kander. Be sure to check them out. They are absolutely incredible for any of your challenges if you're scaling Salesforce projects, implementations, and/or program management that is tool agnostic. I have with me, though, today some incredible speakers. I've got the one, the only, Charlie Isaacs, CTO for Customer Connections, Salesforce. I've got Pallavi Agarwal, CEO and founder at Kander. And I love this human. We've got Gordon Lee as well, Director for Salesforce Solutions Architects at Common Sense Media, an incredible nonprofit that's doing amazing things. And we're going to dive into a little bit more about what they're doing. And today's topic, y'all, is all about practical strategies for embracing AI in 2024. We know that there's a ton of noise out there. A lot of people are talking. We wanted to hold a space where y'all could come and ask these leaders questions. What are other companies doing? How can we get ready? Thinking about data quality, security, all of those things in mind. And this is also an opportunity for you to ask questions live. If you do have a question, we have a few pre-submitted ones, and then we're going to give you all the floor. Be sure to raise your hand. I am monitoring that as well. So we'll answer them in the order that we receive. If we do not get to all of these questions, spoiler alert, we don't. We want you to continue the conversation in the comments for this event. But with that said, I've got Charlie first. Charlie, how are you?
Yeah, I'm doing great here. I'm live from Vegas, baby. Sitting in the airport. Apologies for that. Hopefully you can hear me okay. And of course, travel plans are all messed up because of weather and other things. But here I am. I'm at the airport, and hopefully you can hear me.
Oh, we adore you, friend, and thank you also for always, supporting women-founded businesses in the Salesforce ecosystem, and also always keeping us updated. I feel like you traveling everywhere in the world, so I really appreciate this. How is CES, by the way, or how was it?
Okay, well, guess what the theme was for CES this year?
I
Can
have no
anybody guess?
idea.
Maybe AI? Yeah. So it was AI everywhere. And I was focusing mainly in the West Hall, which had connected vehicles everywhere. And guess what all the connected vehicles had? They had AI embedded in the vehicles, or they were demonstrating AI in the cloud connected to the vehicles in some way.
That is super
And a
cool.
lot of these vehicle manufacturers are, oh, am I
No, go
losing
ahead.
you?
Go ahead. I cut you off. A lot of these vehicle manufacturers. It's okay. Charlie, I know you're at the airport right now, so we're going to come back to you and that point there because I love it. And thank you again for taking a little bit of time in a busy day. I want to go next, though, to Gordon Lee. Gordon, this is your first LinkedIn Live as a speaker, huh?
Yeah, thanks for having me, Tristan. Yeah, it's my first one. Sadly, I'm not in an exciting place like Charlie is at Vegas. I'm in San Francisco. I'm probably the least traveled amongst this group of speakers here, but happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yes, and I'm really glad to have you here, friend. And can you just tell us in a sentence or two, what is Common Sense Media, and what challenges are you all solving as a nonprofit?
Thanks. Yeah, so Common Sense Media, we are a nonprofit based in San Francisco. We help parents and guardians understand the digital world that their kids are growing up in, and we try to become the biggest child advocacy group in the U.S., if not in the world. Our CEO likes to say that we're like the almost like the AARP for kids, if we can do that. And so there's some challenges there around just educating not only parents and educators, but also students and kids around their use of technology online and how to be good digital citizens. We cover a lot of areas around advocacy, education, and consumer content. So sometimes it really feels like we're three nonprofits in one.
I feel that deeply, and also thank you for your service. And next I have over here, and lastly, our VIP guest, CEO and founder of Kander, Pallavi Agarwal. How are you today, friend?
I'm good. I'm also not in exciting places right now, but I am in my hometown, Washington, D.C., which is nice because I'm never here. So, yeah, I'm good.
I love it. I love it. Y'all, we've got a lot of pre-submitted questions here. I'm going to try and keep them as short as possible because the main purpose when I'm hosting these types of events with y'all, I want y'all to be able to grab the mic. So I already saw Amber, you raised your hand. I'm going to get to you in the order that it is. But first, I want to dive through a few quick questions if that's okay. So kind of getting into this, y'all, first, when we're thinking a little bit about all of this noise that's going on right now around AI, right? We know 2023 was the year of AI. Salesforce released a ton of incredible content and exciting new solutions. But I'm curious for y'all, how would you define 2024 when it comes to AI development and adoption for organizations in a sentence or two? And I'm going to start with Charlie.
Okay, well, hopefully you can hear me better now. And
Yeah.
again, I apologize for the technical difficulties. I killed a bunch of stuff on my my laptop, so hopefully this will help. The yes, 2023 was a year of AI, but even prior to that, I don't know if you know this, but Salesforce was working on AI like in the year 2016, which is ages ago. We developed the first versions of Einstein, and then we augmented Einstein by through acquisition and augmentation of those acquisitions with our internal resources. And so we've been in the AI business for quite some time, but we were able to capitalize on the AI boom of late 2022 and early 23. Of course, when Chat GPT came out and we partnered with Chat GPT, and we're partnering with a bunch of other companies that are providing us amazing large language models. And of course, we've developed our own internal large language models. And we even had NLP and other types of models internally that we developed as a result of our development since 2016. Did you hear all that, hopefully? Does it sound better now?
I loved all of that, Fran. And so thinking a little bit more to 2024 from your own perspective, how would you define 2024 for AI development and adoption, given everything you just said, if you had to describe this year?
Yeah, so 2024 is going to be the year that everybody realizes that they shouldn't just dump their stuff into large language models. And they should have a trust layer sitting on top of that. And we've been focusing on trust. Trust is our number one value. It's been that way for many years now. In addition to customer success and equality and the other values we have trust as our number one value. And there's a huge issue associated with trust in the AI models. And like, you don't want to dump your company secrets into ChatGPT, for example. You don't want to dump all your proprietary code, which is what I, by the way, I admit I cheat. I dump my code now because I'm lazy. If there's an error, a syntax error on line 23, I dump it into our internal code genie, and it tells me the stupid thing that I did, so I don't have to. So I'm getting really, really lazy. So it's not just about leveraging natural language processing and large language model processing of massive amounts of data. It's also code. And getting back in the trust layer, there's a huge set of capabilities that companies need in order to know that their large language models aren't going out to the outside world. They're not, their secrets aren't going out to the outside world. And also, we worry a lot about hallucinations, right, from AI. That's another trust component. Hallucinations, and what about things like you don't want things to come back from the AI model that are going to insult people or do really negative things, really bad things, and you shouldn't subject your employees to that sort of thing. So anyway, we have several different, and I forgot to mention one of the most important things is your personal information. You don't want your personal information going into things like ChatGPT.
I love that, and thank you for giving us a little bit behind the scenes too, a little inside scoop from Salesforce and Cogenie. I want to ask that same question back to you, Pallavi, too, right? Because you work with all kinds of customers, right? From Fortune 500 companies to global startups to nonprofits. Um, when you're thinking about, 2024, when it comes to AI development and adoption for organizations, how would you define this year when thinking about your clients?
I think for us, what we're seeing is clients are really starting to, with 2024 strategic planning, really starting to look at efficiencies as the economy continues to be a bit stressful and light. So a lot of them are looking for those efficiencies, right? How can we get our operations? How do we help our current team members in more automated ways? How do we do predictive analysis? So a lot of that, as they're looking through those options, are also looking at ways to get their infrastructure set up for the AI capabilities, right? Because we've talked about in the past how AI is as good as the data behind it. And if the data is not clean and there's not quality data for it to rely on, you're going to get inconsistencies in the outputs because your data isn't where it needs to be. So a lot of them are focused on looking at the strategic planning of AI and what they're really trying to achieve. But then how do you get that infrastructure and foundation put in place to then implement on those strategic moves?
I love that. And I was saying this a little bit in the green room earlier with these awesome VIP humans and leaders. But one of the reasons why I really wanted to hold this space is also really wanted us to kind of take this from a lens of nonprofits. I'm a former social worker. Spoiler alert, the majority of my professional career has actually been in nonprofits before tech. And so I'm always thinking about how technology can help support our nonprofit leaders. And I'm curious for you, Gordon, we're going to touch more on this later, but when you're thinking about 2024, when it comes to AI development adoptions for organizations, specifically nonprofits, like, have you been having any of these conversations with other leaders in this space? And how would you kind of define 2024 when it comes to AI adoption and development for you and your nonprofit?
Yeah, thanks, Tristan. So the tagline that I've been shopping around with the people I've been talking to is that we need to bring some more HI, like some more high in the age of AI. So we have some more human intelligence. We need to bring that back into the age of AI. So specifically for us, I think there's going to be a huge growing emphasis on ethical and responsible AI practices, and basically how does that pertain to your organization when you're looking to figure out how AI can work for you. Obviously, there's the things that Pallavi and Charlie mentioned around, increasing integrations in business processes to enhance productivity. There's the obvious things around enhancing customer interactions with hyper-personalized recommendations, things like that. But the big thing is I think, to a point that Charlie mentioned early on, is like not throwing everything that you have into AI, like not throwing everything into an LLM, because you're not quite sure how that data is going to be used and how ethical it's going to be processed. So there's really, I think, a growing sort of evaluation needed in terms of like even which partner you end up going with. Right? It can't just be this blind signing up for these vendors that offer AI all over the place. You really have to think about, like, do they have a trust layer? Are they doing responsible and ethical things with your data? It's almost like harking back to the days of early social media where we're like, wait, this is great, but then you realize that there's a lot of things that potentially could go wrong with that. So hopefully we're learning from that past and looking at, again, like, how do we make sure that we're using this in an ethical and responsible way? And I think that's going to be a big question for a lot of companies as they start adopting this in much more real time and much more productive ways.
I love that. And we're going to come back to that a little bit more later on in this conversation. I do want to pause for a second and say we have a living legend with us listening, and I just want to shout out Kanika Tolver. This is the Twitter Spaces / any virtual audio space host. This is someone I really look up to. So I just want to shout out Kanika Tolver. I'm so glad you're here. Also, Mark Vernon, hi friend. And we also have Mark Good here. This just makes me so happy. I love you all so much. But I do want to go back, Charlie, to you, friend, because you are on the ground here, right? You are connecting with customers all the time, right? From executives, customer level. So obviously keeping confidentiality in mind, can you share a little bit more where you're seeing customers already applying Salesforce AI solutions to scale their business? And just can you walk us through that a little bit more? Because I really want people to start getting inspired.
Yeah, so we have everybody from Gucci, who was an early adopter of our Einstein GPT. What are we calling it now? Einstein AI. Sorry. I hope the marketing people aren't listening to me butcher their branding.
We'll share this recording after with them. You're welcome. I'm just kidding.
Okay, good. Yeah, that'll be great. It was nice knowing you. Hey, anyway, so I mean, let me start with things that are top of mind, because hopefully you could hear me better than you did when I started. I was talking about Vegas, what was going on here. If you walk around the show floor, you see the AI, and I was talking about trust earlier, and they didn't really worry about, they don't have their trust layers for most of these companies, so don't worry about grounding and toxicity and things I was talking about earlier. But the companies that we're working with here, like Qualcomm, so let me talk about Qualcomm. They have, I don't know if you know this, they have AI on a chipset, right? So they need to make sure that the AI that they're leveraging is wrapped around a trust layer. So when you're in the vehicle, the use case we demonstrated here, the first 5 words of the demo are, hey, and their platform's called Snapdragon. They're built on the Snapdragon chipset, which is in your phone. It's in your, actually, I think they have millions of vehicles connected now on the Snapdragon platform. All the major brands are on their Snapdragon automotive platform, but they built this thing called Car to Cloud. So the first 5 words of the demo are, hey, Snapdragon, what's this error message on my dashboard, right? So it goes to their local large language model and tries to interpret what's going on, and it determines that there's a charger port error. And then it sends that into Salesforce, and Salesforce does a lookup on charger port error and finds a dealer that could solve that problem. And it does proximity search on dealer, and it could also do some other large language models leveraging in Einstein AI to determine what's the next best scenario for that customer. Well, the nearest dealer is here, but that's not one of their dealer preferences. So let's go to the second one. And then it serves that up to the dashboard, right? So AI is wrapped around all of these use cases. And when they can, and let me continue while I'm digging into the demo that we showed. So the scheduling is available it makes you pull over. So you're not supposed to be driving while you're scheduling your dealer appointment. So it forces you to put the car in park, and then you select your date and time for the dealer. And then the other place that AI, and we didn't do this in the demo, but AI can come into place where when you approach the dealer, AI can, well, it does do geofencing in the demo. So you park, you come close to the dealer, it breaks the geofence and says, oh, this customer is near. What we did was, this was kind of hard coded in the demo, but this could be AI helping out. What's the right part to fix that charger port error? What's the right tool? And to also notify the dealer when the person arrives, right? The person just pulled up, they broke the geofence, so send the notification, and then the field service tablet from Salesforce takes over at that point. And we demonstrated all this stuff on the show floor. But think about where AI could come in and augment even the basic story we showed there, in addition to the next best activity for the dealer, but also for the driver. What do they do next? You know, what are the things they could do while they're waiting for their car to be serviced and things like that? I'm rambling on too long.
No. That was really good, friend. You were reminding me a little bit about that Julia Roberts and Michelle Ali Netflix film where she's dodging all of those smart cars that were been hacked. And I was like, well, I hope she had a trust layer in mind for that. But I do want to go back to, and that was super, I love that pragmatic use case, and I like that's super exciting. I'm curious, just zooming out from that brilliant use case, thinking a little bit more around, when we're thinking about like what's the number one guiding principle right now to ensure that new AI initiatives are aligned across business goals, right? Because I feel like the technology is moving so quickly. And I know, Pallavi, you and I have talked about this a little bit, right? Like, what are companies doing to prioritize governances? What policies are they putting in place? Because I feel like in terms of, the technology is moving faster than policy across international law, but also in organizations. So I really want them to be inspired. So it's a long-winded way of saying, like, for you and your experience talking with clients, what's the number one guiding principle that you're recommending them to ensure that AI initiatives are aligned across business goals?
Oh, was that a question for me or for Pallavi?
It'll be for Pallavi first, but you can always chime in, friend. But I'll let you
Oh.
go first.
Charlie, go ahead.
Oh, no, you go. It was your turn. I'm talking way too much. Go, girl.
Sorry, Tristan, can you summarize that question one more time?
Yeah, so I really want to make sure that businesses are aligning AI initiatives across their company goals. So I'm curious for you, like, what are some guiding principles that you're recommending to clients to make sure that all of these AI initiatives are aligned and matching those business goals?
Yeah, I mean, business goals tend to shift, right? As the economy shifts and things are working, things are not working. So, first, I just want to call out that business goals are never just cemented in from day one. They're constantly evolving and going into a direction that is the benefit of the business. And so, as the strategies are evolving, part of the reason AI is at the forefront right now is for those efficiencies and predictability. In the past, we didn't have technology as powerful as AI to help us predict as much or at the breadth of the way data is available. We had our own subsets of data that we were relying on from our own experiences or our own businesses to capture the trends that we saw and take somewhat of what was available in the industry. So as we're creating these trends and getting our goals more aligned from a business perspective, really putting AI aside first and just putting those business initiatives in place of like, what am I shifting in my business to stay relevant in this industry, to stay competitive, and to get to the goals I want to get to from an exit strategy perspective, because every business has some level of an exit strategy. Once those business objectives and strategies are aligned, then looking at, okay, where are areas I can create efficiencies? Where are areas I may need more data points and predictability? And then building an AI strategy around that. And then working through like what is allowed, what is not allowed? How do we protect our data? How do we write governance around it? How do we train our organization to use AI? And then how do we monitor the use of AI, and what guardrails do we put in place to allow creativity and exploration of AI within our organization?
Yeah. Hey, let me chime in now since I was talking too much before, but I'm going to transition to Gordon because I know Gordon can say a lot about this. And Gordon is the one that mentioned ethical and humane use types of use cases, right? And why that ethics is so important when it comes to AI. And I want to just shout out to our to Paula Goldman and her group at Salesforce, she runs ethics and humane use at Salesforce. And I consult with that group every time I build something new that might be controversial. And especially now with AI sprinkled into everything, they are like my best friends, right? Because they'll tell me, no, Charlie, you can't do that. That's offensive, or that is going to be a bad thing for customers to implement that. But the point I would like to make is that we have the ability to, you could, as a Salesforce customer, you could take advantage of the people on her team to look at across your business areas, how you can ethically apply AI, which I think is the most important thing to consider first. You don't want toxicity sprinkled on top of whatever you're providing to your customers, right? Or you don't want to offend your customers by doing bad things with your AI capabilities. So we do have some folks at Salesforce that are focusing on helping our customers do exactly what you asked about. So Gordon, I bet you can chime in on this too, right?
Yeah, thanks, Charlie. It's interesting listening to you two because like it feels like you guys have been like reading my mind in terms of what we've been doing here at Common Sense as well. The big thing around the ethical use is, I mean, one thing that we definitely have had to do is before we even thought about bringing in AI, is that we had to take a hard look at our data privacy and security measures and see how AI might affect that. And if you're like wondering what is a data privacy and security measure, like you probably shouldn't be looking at AI in the first place because the AI and the data is going to go hand in hand and it's definitely going to affect it. I think it's also important to note as a guiding principle, like, you know, you hear about AI right now and some people are having AI fatigue and you hear about so much of it that you have to remember that there's also all these different flavors of it, right? There's this amazing use case that Charlie just mentioned around bringing your entire user experience in the vehicle all the way to the dealership. But there's also smaller things. For example, having AI help you generate like an image, right? Or having it help you through a platform create some slide decks for you or summarize meeting notes. And although some of those look innocuous, you have to sometimes take a very hard look at that. And again, this is where the ethical practices come in of like, am I going to sign up for this tool, for example, that helps me summarize my meeting notes if I don't even know what the privacy policy looks like, right? There were reports, I think, early on of, for example, some companies that were using these type of tools for their Zoom meetings and then realizing that these tools were summarizing the board's notes and then potentially selling it to other vendors. So you have to take a long, hard look at that before you decide to just sign up for anything willy-nilly. And I think that's one small thing. And then another thing would be that if you're not, you know, don't try to boil the ocean. Definitely try to launch like small iterative projects that you can learn from the feedback of that. And then if you want to think about the entire cycle of sort of how this might affect your employees, you also have to think about the training and development and how you might have to upskill them. Like maybe there needs to be a course on certain employees of like how to do prompt engineering or how this actually helps or what you shouldn't do. For example, like don't put all your personal information into ChatGPT or other tools like that. So thinking through those use cases, I think is a very important guiding principle in terms of like how you would bring in AI initiatives. But it's also, I think, important to define like what flavor of AI you want to bring in, right? It can be this one big innocuous thing, or it can also just be these small little things that are for these small teams or for these small projects.
I love that. And I think thinking a little bit more about ethics, but also thinking too more around, you know, nonprofits. We know that nonprofits have a lot of limited resources. And so I'm curious if like, Gordon, when you're thinking about this into any nonprofit leader who's listening right now, what would be some of the top considerations that you would have them put in mind and get in place? Like you talked about a few flavors, but thinking a little bit more, let's talk about donors, for example, right? Like people are trying to build that out, create more efficiencies, get more donors out there, like, but data quality is always top of mind. We're thinking about integrations, right? What are just a few key considerations? Because like, I think you're absolutely brilliant. He's also hilarious, y'all, by the way, for anyone who doesn't know that. And if you don't know him, you're living under a rock, but he's hilarious. What are just a few quick items that you think that leaders should consider? And I'd love to start with Gordon and then pass it over.
Yeah, it's a fluid conversation even internally right now. It's never done. I mean, I know that nonprofits, for example, we often prioritize measuring social impact, right? So you should really be designing initiatives that have clear metrics for assessing both like the effective use of your technology and also like how it contributes to the organization's mission. Like it should be looking at like how does this actually help us get our work done and how does it actually help contribute to the mission. The part that I would say, or a couple of things that I would say that definitely needs some, I would say, clarity in this area or some scrutiny in this area is definitely making sure that as the, you know, gatekeepers or the protectors of, in this case, donor information, that, you know, you protect that as if it was your own information and you don't want that, you know, willy-nilly being outsourced out to other vendors or other robotics that might be doing things that you don't know of. Like if you cannot answer the question of like what is happening to my donor's data, you need to take a hard look of like what it is that you're actually trying to do with these tools, AI or not, and basically be able to help answer that question of if a donor comes to you and says, was my data sold or was my data potentially sold to another party? I'll cede the floor off that, or I will ramble on and on about this topic.
I absolutely love this. And I want to make sure just before we go to other speakers for their insights into what Gordon said, y'all, please, if you have any questions and you're not comfortable stepping up and grabbing the mic, you can always DM me. But we're going to open up to the floor in a little bit. And I see some familiar faces here, so I'm really excited about this. But Pallavi, Charlie, any thoughts on what Gordon just said?
Okay, I'll go. Sorry, hopefully I'm talking over Pallavi. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. So I think with regards to nonprofits, I think, first of all, I've always thought that AI, if you heard me speak at one of the dreaming events, one of the first things that I say about AI is it's a great equalizer, right, for underrepresented groups. Because if you can get, well, it's a great equalizer if you can get access to the internet, right? If you can get access to an AI large language model, you can learn pretty much about anything. And the other thing you could do, which I think is going to be very beneficial for nonprofits, is skills assessment and being able to do personalized skills assessment. And we're hopefully I'm not violating confidentiality here, but we have an internal project at Salesforce where we've trained a large language model on all of our product documentation and all of our training materials and everything we have, even like certification tests. And we can have, we can generate tests a lot quicker now as a result of that. And I'll leave it at that because I'm not sure if I'm telling you things I'm not supposed to be talking about. Hopefully I won't get in trouble here. But imagine if you were a company and you took your large language model in a trusted manner, right? If you wrapped a trust layer on top of it first from Salesforce, sorry. Was that a paid advertising? No. So if you take that model and then you give it all your internal documentation, or guess what? Apply it to Slack if you're a Slack customer. And if you're not, why not? No, I'm just kidding. Anyway, so having, because Slack is the corporate repository of knowledge, which is what the Slack acronym stands for, right? Anyway, so you could take all that information and train an LLM, or the LLM could learn on the fly about that. And as people are interacting with that, like, so I can apply, for example, I've got Trailhead badges and I don't have any certifications, which I'm embarrassed about, but I've never taken the time to get certified. But if you have certifications in specific areas, it should be able to look at what you're doing and tell you what your skill gaps are for applying to this specific job, right? What do I need to apply to this job? And if you're an underrepresented person and you really want to get ahead, right? And what you could do is you can go to one of these engines and say, hey, what do I need to do to get this job, right? This is my aspiration. This is what I want to do. So that's just an example, but I don't know if that makes sense.
No, I absolutely love that. I think that's part of it too. Going back to what Gordon was saying before, there are different flavors. And I think your other part you're talking to, Charlie, I know echoed on this previously, Pallavi, is like, there's so many different ways that we can take advantage. And so I've always been about meeting clients and where they're at for continuous positive change. I'm curious for you too, Pallavi, right? So thinking a little bit more from a nonprofit lens, and also what we've been having this conversation, what are some suggestions you have for nonprofits to take advantage of, AI readiness so that they are ready to adopt when they get there? Because I 100% agree with you when you said that, Charlie. Like, it should be an equalizer. If you have access to the internet, 100%. But I want to pass over to Pallavi because you work with all kinds of nonprofits as well.
Yeah, this one's a little tricky because unfortunately, as much as data should be, access to technology should create an equalizer, a lot of nonprofits are still a little bit behind in the tech era because their energies and budgets are mostly focused on doing the work that the nonprofits' missions are aligned to, and they don't get to invest as much in their technology. So I can't say like just for every nonprofit out there to just, hey, go out and check out AI and start implementing it because nonprofits also need to first do that impact analysis and see where their infrastructure is and really help establish that. Now, some of them are a little bit more advanced of how they're utilizing Salesforce. They're thinking through those things. And some of our current customers that are not to be named, are looking at those impacts and looking at ways to create those efficiencies, but also creating those trust layers, as Charlie was mentioning. And that's why Salesforce becomes more and more attractive. When they already have Salesforce embedded, how do they use some of the Salesforce AI technology that's in place with the trust layers that are there? And then how do we find expertise support to help us implement that? Because that's another thing that we haven't talked about is we're all talking about AI, but there's chief diversity inclusion officers now. Well, just as AI started being talked about, now there's chief AI officers, but the roles and the descriptions for those jobs are just getting created. So people are still exploring that space. So I would say lean in on those experts in the industry who are taking the time and investments and resources and putting it into AI to learn the ins and outs, to talk about trust, to talk about governance. Lean in on them as well to support your organizations to implement AI.
Amen. Amen. I wish that there were more react emojis on this platform. We are, though, I was going to say too, Kanika, don't hate me. I absolutely adore you. I was wondering if you were comfortable and or if you were in a place for audio, if you were comfortable at all grabbing the mic, because I think you have a wealth of experience and you do so much for others. So totally on the table, Kanika. But if you feel like sharing any thoughts, I'd love to hear them. You can always request the mic. You're the best. I do want to go back a little bit to this as well. Oh, yeah. Yes, Kanika is coming through. Oh my gosh. You all are in for a treat. Hi, friend. How are you?
Hey, how you doing? Can you hear me?
Oh, loud and clear, friend. It's always good to hear your voice. Kanika, please, please, please meet my amazing, amazing guests here today. We've got Pallavi, Charlie, and Gordon. Yes, I just adore you, Kanika. Do you have any questions or insights for our amazing leaders? It's always good to hear you.
No, I've definitely been listening to the conversation. For those that are in the room, my name is Kanika Tover. I work in the GovTech space. So I primarily work with low-code platforms like ServiceNow, and we also in my organization, we do a lot of Salesforce development as well. So I'm just right now kind of like an AI geek, just trying to soak up all of the information that some of the points that the amazing speakers talked about today. My working in government and implementing low-code platforms like ServiceNow and Salesforce, I think that we're just really trying to wrap our minds around some of the things that you guys mentioned about, governance, dealing with potential security risk and privacy issues, and just making sure that we, have a solid AI playbook for the types of things that we work on and implement. Because some of the things that we work on are very private and requires a lot more security, and some things are public facing. But I definitely think that governance and having clear ethics in mind is super important for implementing AI technologies. I think that we're all excited about AI, but I do think before we actually adopt AI technologies within any platform that we're using, that we clearly know how the technologies are going to work and how it's going to interact with potential data that's being stored in these different tools like ServiceNow and Salesforce. And I just think that it's important that we educate and upskill the workforce. I think that's the most important thing that I'm learning as a leader, is that I'm excited to learn about it, right? My management is like, let's focus on what's in front of us, right? And AI isn't exactly in front of us. But I think it's important that we talk more about how do we skill up the workforce to feel like that they won't be replaced by the technology? How can we encourage them to actually implement new ways to learn the technology with the tools that they have in place within their organization right now today? And I just think that that's something that we don't talk about a lot. We talk about how it's going to replace jobs, but we need to focus on reskilling and upskilling our existing workforce so people feel like they're not threatened by the technology.
Correct, correct. And Charlie, I know you're going to chime in for a second. I just want to do a quick plug, and we're going to come back to this, but I think you're 100% on the nail there, and that's something why I really like Salesforce recently came out with this, right? Like, I think was it 67% or 71% of executives surveyed from a 2023 report felt like people weren't equipped to adopt it. So I just want to give a shout out to the amazing people on Trailhead and everyone who's putting out content. But Charlie, you're going to say something to what Kanika was saying, friend. And I'm so glad you're on.
No, Kanika. No, great. Kanika, that was great. Great, extremely spot on. And they were great point, and you articulated better than what I was trying to say about earlier about AI should be an augmentation strategy, right? Assessing skills. I was talking about skills assessment via large language models, but AI should always be an augmentation strategy, right? It should help you make you more productive in your work, but also it should allow you to improve yourself as a human. It should be the human being augmentor, right? So it should be a strategy for how do I make myself better as a human? And I've talked to a lot of customers about that, and they're very interested in making their employees better people, not just from a skill standpoint, but also as a human being. And that's where like Paula Goldman and her group, they're trying to focus there too, right? How do we, AI could be evil, but let's turn it around. Let's turn the evil into a positive thing.
I completely agree with you. I think that's so important. And I think that, just taking a step back and getting down to the basics and people understanding the different language models, different terminology. A lot of people don't, they want to, this is what I'm doing. I can't speak on other people, how they're approaching it. I have no issue or problem with adopting the tools from a productivity perspective, like, Chat GPT, also utilizing different tools that are coming with Copilot. But I think it's also for me being a leader in my organization, is that I also want to understand why these technologies are doing what they're doing from a technical perspective. So I don't want to dumb down my technical understanding to be so quick to adopt a front user interface. So for me, I always want to kind of be like a technical hybrid person, where it's like I don't have a problem with being an end user of these technologies, but at the same time, I want to understand why they're doing what they're doing. So when we are doing new development, when we are doing any technical reviews, I think like we're doing technical review boards now, and I think that that's something that is new for our organization. Is everything that we integrate into our low-code platforms, that we are reviewing it with the technical review board. So that's the application development team. That's the security folks. That's also including people that manage the infrastructure of our technologies from an O&M perspective. I think we should do that with AI too, right? We shouldn't just incorporate things without going through a proper technical review board to ensure that we, one, understand, two, we don't push it into our environments before people have reviewed it. But it's like, how can you push something into a new environment if you don't fully understand what you're working with? So I don't want to hijack the space, Kristen, but that's just my
You're not.
that's just my feel on that.
You are not. You are literally like Y'all, we're gonna this is a really important topic, and I have a follow-up question to this, but like I love my Kanika Tolver so much. She also has an incredible
I love you too.
Oh, to the moon friend. She also has an incredible book called Career Rehab. Please follow this incredible leader. I adore them. But I do want to open that up to a larger question, right? Like, and this is where I would love other panelists to chime in here, is we saw recently, right, with Unity, right? We're seeing this with, we're seeing a lot of companies kind of having investors having FOMO and being like, oh, well, this company laid off some people. We got to do it too. AI. How do we bring executives and the CEOs that, are working with investors in the board? How do we bring senior leadership together and really come up with a comprehensive plan, not just around safely adopting AI and really thinking about the impact for our users, but how do we bring executives together to start investing in their employees and adopting AI? There are no solutions right now, but I do want to ask this question to Pallavi. And we're not solving cancer, y'all.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to answer the question, but I'm actually curious from Charlie
Yes.
being at CES. What did you hear about this?
Great point.
Try to unmute here. Yeah. So at CES, there was a lot of discussion around what AI could do in product X or product Y. There wasn't a lot of discussion that I heard anyway about how to bring in, the C-level executives. And by the way, the C-level executives were all over the show. I met with a lot of C-level executives from our customers here at the show, and it is top of mind for them. But they, one of the things I mentioned about leveraging our Office of Ethical and Humane Use. There are advisory services, and I know Pallavi can provide some support in that area too. But my recommendation would be to work with companies that, for example, have a trust layer, that know how to apply these things and have dozens of customers already under their belt where they've made the mistakes, right? Because there are mistakes to be made. By the way, there are going to be hallucinations. Even at one of our early adopter customers, there were hallucinations that we had to overcome. And this was a contact center environment where the hallucinations came up. I mean, we had a very low percentage. It was like below the 2% level, or maybe even below 1% hallucination level. But still, there has to be not only human in the loop, which is what our trust layer is all about, but you need to make sure that the C-level executives understand about things like grounding and toxicity and all the important things around trust. So that would be my recommendation.
I like that a lot. Before I do a follow-up though, I do want to say Vernon Keenan, y'all, is in the house, another international treasure and celebrity in this space. Vernon, how are you?
Hey, great space. I've never done one of these before.
You're welcome. Do you have any questions and or insights that you wanted to share, friend? Because you're on top of all of this technology too. So is there anything you'd like to ask our Charlie?
Yeah, I mean, the thing I think there's a real crisis in governance. So I think that's what we've been talking about here. And I think the external pressure on governance for big companies is huge because of how fast open AI is moving. Well, you got things like the GPT store and now the new team edition. And there's a lot of pressure for people to build governance. And I think it's important because if there's just a negative view on AI and governance, meaning you can't use it and we're not giving you a way to do it, I think you're going to have a lot of good employees at companies say, well, I'm going to find a company that lets me use AI. So I think there's that kind of pressure on shadow GPT usage, as well as this desire to use AI in people's jobs, because there's a lot of interest in it. And, there's huge numbers on the people actually using ChatGPT.
And that's a really, really good point, which I do want to bring over to Gordon. Like, Gordon, you're talking a little bit about this, different flavors, right? You also have to maintain the confidentiality and data for your donors, right? And or anyone else in your org. How how do you recommend this? Like, do you have any insights into this? How we can like not lose that talent as well? Because people are going to be trying out these tools from the bottom to the top.
Yeah, I mean, I'm processing everything here that the speakers are going
There's a
through,
lot,
and
I
this
know.
I mean, it's amazing because I think from a 50,000 foot perspective, right? What I tell my team and what I tell others is that you have to remember that at the end of the day, that this is a tool, right? It can be used for good, it can be used for evil, much like anything else in life. Even if with like a hammer, for example, right? Like it can be used to build, it can be used to destroy. So there needs to be, I think, to Kanika's point, like some upskilling and some understanding of workforce training around like how do you use these tools ethically, how do you use it well, what are some things that can go wrong with this and how to avoid that. And this realization with any technological leap that there will be certain skills that might get displaced, but then how do we take care of those people and how do we upskill them in maybe in the same area or in different areas. AI is no different. It's just much more transformative and much more disruptive and much faster than anything that we've come across lately. But there needs to be sort of this focus around governance, around security, around ethics, and also around the people, right? Like, how are you using this and how are you actually doing it? Because it's not just like this automated thing that'll do it all for you. One of the big things is, again, with the flavor of AI is, can it be, can you use it to just do simple things around, let's say, basic data cleansing? Or do you need it to do more complex critical decision making? And that's where I think it gets a little more scary. But on the other end of the spectrum, where you're saying like, I just need you to capitalize all the states in my database to make sure it goes through okay, like that's a low end risk. But if you're like, I need you to decide for me whether or not I cut 10% of our budget, I mean, that's where you, I think executives can get very, very antsy about like, well, how do we trust the decisions that are made by the AI systems, and how do we ensure transparency and explainability in these decision making scenarios.
Mm, yes, just yes, 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 yes. And I want to say thank you so much to Bernie Kanika for grabbing the mic and come sharing. I do want to be mindful of everyone and time. Charlie, you're literally at the airport after an insane busy week at CES and everything else. So I want to make sure that we end on the hour. And I also want to make sure that we leave our amazing live listeners, as well as anyone listening to this recording, with just a key takeaway when we're thinking about practical strategies for embracing AI. So I'd love to leave, Charlie, any closing thoughts here, any practical strategy, one strategy you want to share with our global listeners?
Yeah, so I'm going to cop out and say, use Google. Google's your friend. No, just kidding. Go to, if you want some guiding principles, and if you want to know how we develop ethical generative AI from the start, just Google that, right? Say, there's an article, there's a blog up there. And these were both posted, late last year. So they're still relevant and they're still current. But just look for Meet Salesforce Trusted AI Principles and how Salesforce develops ethical generative AI from the start. And there's also 5 guidelines for responsible development. We talk about governance, we talk about ethics, and there's even something up there about a ethics maturity model. How where do you fall under the ethics maturity model curve? So that's the plug I'd like to leave, and also use help. By the way, use Trailhead. I think someone joined from the Trailhead team. Shout out to Trailhead. Use Trailhead to learn all about AI, and use our help. I search for help sometimes in Salesforce and come up with the answer that I need. Although I cheat now, I just use our internal LLM to find all my answers. But I used to do that. Outside Salesforce, you could use help.
I absolutely love that, friend. Thank you so much. And I like that idea around like what is your maturity level when it comes to ethics, when it comes to AI adoption at 100% in development? That's spot on. I'm leaving this conversation with that. Pallavi, same question. What's one key takeaway that you want our global listeners to walk away with when thinking about practical strategies for embracing AI adoption?
I like to keep it really simple, right? Don't be afraid of it. Like test it out. Don't expose any of your data, but test it out. Like I play around with ChatGPT sometimes just for fun. I run a DC admin group and we like to be cute with our RSVP responses. And sometimes creativity is a blocker. So I'll use ChatGPT and other tools to create cool graphics or just ask random questions. I know people use it in their personal lives. It doesn't have to be all work associated. So if you can get comfortable with this new technology and play around with it, and it's in a safe space.
I love that. And I also like how too, because I think for anyone who doesn't know Pallavi, again, you're living under a rock. One of the things that I've always admired about your approach to leadership has been how you really break adoption down into micro commitments and also remind people around experimentation. And it's something I've always left with from one of our previous Digital Candor conversations. I don't remember which one it was. I have to go back over our records, but we were talking about leaving room for experimentation and in a safe environment. So I really, really like that. Also, shout out to the DC admin group. If you're in the DC area and listening to this recording, check it out. Gordon, for all of our nonprofits out there, there's leaders right now and or anyone in this space, what's one key takeaway that you want them to have when it comes to embracing AI adoption in a practical way?
Yeah, I'm just gonna kind of pile on what Pallavi said there around like testing in a safe environment is, make sure you measure twice and cut once, right? Like go into it, experiment with it, but have things like, on our end, like data privacy protections in place to understand that, this is going to be great for us, but we need to understand like what could potentially go wrong with us as well. So don't just go into it in one spectrum or the other of like, this is all amazing or that, this is all world ending, but you've got to approach it from a practical perspective of like, okay, where can this actually help? And in terms of where that can help, like, will this affect our business negatively in some way if word were to get out or things were to get out around this data?
I love all of this. I want to say, because I know everyone's in back-to-back meetings, so I want to say thank you so much. Please, a round of applause with those emojis. Round of applause for our amazing, amazing speakers. Charlie, I adore you, friend. Thank you so much for taking some time out of a busy schedule. I'm leaving with a lot of insights. You're just the best. I want to say to Gordon, thank you for not just being a leader that we all can look up to and having an amazing team, but also the important work that you're doing with Common Sense Media. I really, really was so grateful for your time. And Charlie, I know you're going to say something in a second. I just want to make sure I get to Pallavi. Pallavi, thank you also for sharing the space, for supporting these types of important conversations, and just being a badass for all these amazing, amazing clients that you have. I really appreciate you all being here. With Charlie, go ahead, Charlie.
Yeah, I just want to say I adore you back. Pallavi, thanks for great things you've done with Kander. Keep up the great work. Thanks for being a great Salesforce partner. Thank you, Gordon, for all you do. And I got to sign off and run for my airplane. Talk to you later.
Run to the airplane.
Safe travels, Charlie. Thank you.
Have fun, Charlie.
All right, y'all. Stay blessed, stay ethical, and keep on learning. Appreciate y'all, and we'll talk soon. Bye.
Bye. Thanks, everyone.